Friends and my dear students, welcome back to our lesson number 2 of Futures Literacy or Future Studies. So this presentation is prepared based on the article written by Riel Miller, who is heading the UNESCO's program on Futures Literacy. So this will give you a very clear understanding about what this program is about, and also what this futures literacy or futures studies, its significance in today's context. So this is in fact is a evolution of the concept futures literacy from the conventional trends analysis. So what we have to understand here today is before this future studies as a discipline came into prominence, earlier the similar objectives were being met by using what is called as trends analysis. So now we have realized that trends analysis have their own limitations. So therefore, this future studies is a step ahead of this trends analysis. So in this lesson, you will understand what are the unique features of future studies and how it is different from trends analysis, and what kind of an exercise we do in this future studies. Conventionally, trends were used to know about the future, but the trends have limitations in the context of unforeseen events. Because the trends analysis we generally use as a mathematical or a statistical exercise using a formula and using a database. So here some unforeseen events cannot be accommodated in this analysis. That is how trends analysis will have certain limitations. If you look at today's the dynamic world, sometimes trends make us to know about the future as a mechanical linkage and inhibits imagination. Because in the trends analysis, as we know, it is a mathematical exercise. So it is a mechanical treatment of events and data. So therefore, there is a little scope for imagination when we carry out a trends analysis to know about the future. As I told you, the world we are living in today is more dynamic than what we expect. And therefore, the trends in the past have limitations to understand the future. One of the best illustrations for this is the present pandemic. I think none of the experts who were familiar with the trends analysis could not foresee that we are going to face this kind of a pandemic and a problem at a global level. So that is shows that's the limitations of trends analysis. Therefore, the future studies certainly have a better edge as compared to the trends analysis. So anticipation of the future is gaining significance as it plays a fundamental role in shaping the decisions of today. So we were discussing this point even in the previous presentations also. The decisions of today are very important, very crucial to reap their benefits in the future. So therefore, the anticipation of the future, keeping some expectations in the future, we have to take decisions today. So that is what we call as a futures thinking is essential for a better decision making. So we will come to know more about it in the later part of this presentation. So this is about envisioning an image, imagining the image of the future. That is what this slide shows. Though before future coming into existence, we will be imagining how it looks like, and accordingly we take decision whether we want this kind of an image to be there or we don't want. So if we don't want, then what kind of decisions we have to take. So accordingly we go back and change our decisions. So our actions are led by the anticipation of the future. This is throughout the history we have been witnessing this. Future matters to make better decisions. This is absolutely true, because always good decisions are made keeping the future consequences in mind. It is needless to say that thinking about the future is a way to improve decision making at all levels, individuals to nation state. So I think that there is no second opinion on this. Thinking about the future is always, guides us while taking decisions, whether these decisions are appropriate or not. Futures thinking is a fundamental determinant of quality of our decision. So the decisions, how we measure the quality of the decision, we measure in terms of its futures components. I think that the futures consequences. So if we have a better futures thinking, we can take a good decision so that we should not repent in the later part that we have taken wrong decisions. So this is a one picture. I think all of us should concentrate on this. This is the more the basic of this futures thinking. So how futures thinking is different from a layman's thinking. So this picture, this slide gives you some idea about how futures thinkers are different from ordinary citizens. So here we have 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is what happens if this happens. So this is the first assumption we begin with. So then the other alternative is what happens if this does not happen. That is the second alternative. Then the third alternative is what won't happen if this happens. And the fourth alternative is what won't happen if this does not happen. So if you put some kind of an assumption or some practical problem into these 4 quadrants, you will certainly get very interesting scenarios, 4 different scenarios. Each quadrant will guide us to develop one scenario independently. This is the kind of exercise we do in the later part. In the module 2, we will discuss about some of these methods in detail. So nothing to worry at this moment. You just be aware that these are the subject related issues we will be dealing with in this future studies. So accurate prediction about the future is difficult and sometimes beyond imagination. However, futures thinking trains us to expect the unexpected. This is the peculiarity of the futures thinking. A very good futurist will certainly expect certain unexpected things. Okay, so that is how he will be grading certain decisions which may end up disastrous in the later point of time in the future. So futures thinking trains us on how to imagine future on logical grounds. It needs a rigorous imagination. Therefore, we say it is also a kind of an art, even though it is a science. So it is a blend of science and art. That is what we discussed in the previous lesson. It is a permutation and combination of various assumptions about the future. So as you saw in the previous slide, we had 4 quadrants. So similarly, we make assumptions and then we combine various assumptions in different combinations and see what are the kinds of alternative futures we may end up. So that will give a very exhaustive possibilities about the future. So that is the beauty of this discipline. It is about imagining a phenomenon as if it exists in the future and developing a scenario story. So this is like a filmmaker, a director of a film. If he is working on a science fiction, how he imagines what would happen in 2050. So that is the kind of exercise we would be doing as students of future studies here. To get operationally practical outcomes, one must be futures literate. So this is the reason why every one of us wish to be futures literate. When you don't know what to expect, prepare for the unexpected. It is quite simple. So if you don't know what to expect in the future, so then we should be mentally prepared to accept whatever that unexpected things happen. That is the meaning of this slide. Then expect everything so that nothing comes unexpected. This is another possibility. So you know all kinds of things. Okay, you expect probably in another 6 months, there may be a meteor coming and hitting the earth. So that also may be possible. To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly a modern intellect. So therefore, in this 21st century, we are all concerned about the future or futures. Therefore, this futures literacy has some significance which will make us more modern, like our reading and writing literacy, computer literacy, financial literacy. They are taking us to a new level of civilization. Similarly, this futures literacy will take us to a different level of civilization, a more modern civilization with a very conscious people who take decisions based on certain futuristic thinking. So coming to the characteristics of futures literacy, it is about the capacity of an individual to think about the future. I think this point we have covered in the earlier presentation also. It is about the human capacity, the innate capacity of the human beings, as UNESCO defines it. Like reading and writing literacy, futures literacy is a skill that can be learned. So it is not something only a few people can acquire. No, not that way. Futures literacy is like a other literacy like reading and writing. So anybody can acquire these skills. There are only the levels of learning that we have to bear in mind. So like alphabet in the conventional literacy, futures literacy begins by evoking people's values, expectations, and sense of time. Because to have a vision of the future, because it is a value loaded assumption, because you should know about what is good for the society by 2050. So good and bad, these are all value related terms. So therefore, for a good futures literate or a future studies student, they should have some kind of a value orientation. That is what we mean by this. Then the expectations and sense of time. So they need to have some expectations because as we were discussing, future expectations, what kind of society or what kind of situations you want to create for yourself in the future. So that should be your expectation, some kind of a framework and sense of time. So whether you are making decisions and taking action in a short-term gain or for a medium term or for a long term. So you need to have some sense of time so that you can create a framework for yourself to start working on those issues. This is the first level of learning in future studies. At the second level, future studies involves to construct a set of assumptions that are the basis for constructing a descriptive scenario for and about the future. So you need to have certain assumptions. That is the very more imaginative exercise. You have to assume certain things. Then based on that, you create the scenarios about the future. This point we will be discussing in the later module, so that here you should understand that this is what kind of an exercise we would be doing ahead. So this will give you some hints about the kinds of exercises we will be carrying out in the later part. At the third level, a snapshot of the present is compared to a snapshot of an imagined future. This is the third level of exercise we do as future studies students. So this process generates necessary insights for decision making. So in this statement, what we do is we take a present scenario and we characterize. Then we imagine the future, some 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years ahead. And we imagine this should have been the situation for 2030. Then we compare what is lacking and how to accomplish this. So that is the kind of exercise we do. I think Uh, as I told you, these are just informative slides. This is for the sake of information. We are providing what is the subject matter of this future studies. So in the later modules, we will discuss and make it more clear how to carry out these exercises. The focus here is how different assumptions lead to different choices for the future. So you will come across many interesting assumptions. You make one assumption and you get one kind of a scenario, and you change your assumption and you get another kind of a scenario. So like that, you will be working on various scenarios. So the sky is the limit. So you will see how such exercises can be carried out in the later part of this course. Then futures literacy as a capacity underpins the development of collective intelligence. So we talk of collective intelligence because we cannot think exhaustively. So people, when we sit in a group, each one of us can contribute some kind of our own imagination and contribute and enrich our discussion. It is a skill that facilitates the search for a new forms of a state of being. So certainly we want to enter into a new phase for ourselves. So that is how a collective decisions can take us to a different levels of being and different levels of existence. So building futures literacy can change the capacity of a society in transforming aspirations into reality in the 21st century. Therefore, the UNESCO talks of making this futures literacy as a mass literacy because it should take place at a societal level, at a collective, as a collective action. So then only we can build a good society for ourselves, a desirable society. So this is a kind of a dream to make it happen. So thank you for listening to my this lesson number 2. Thank you once again.